Hello, neighbors. My name is
Hello.
Morris Milchman, and joining me once again today is Elise Adlin, and we are going to be talking about the Lantern Act today, and also the 1985 California Supreme Court decision that basically made the Lantern Act more lantern-y. So, without further ado, welcome to Rolling Through Consulting, and let's get on with it.
All right. Let's hear about the Lanterman Act.
So, every state in the union has different rules and ways of helping the disabled community. The Lanterman Act is unique to California. It is a very important act because it's sort of like the Disability Bill of Rights. And there's something that happened in 1985 that makes it even more important, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
All right.
So let's begin. Okay. Well, there we go. What is the Lantern Act? Okay. So to start with, let's talk about what happened with Geraldo in the 1960s. He had a documentary and it basically changed the way disabled people were taken care of in well with everything. The disabled community used to be put into institutions and you would basically have your child put into an institution. You would see them maybe over some weekends, maybe you wouldn't see them ever again. And that's how the disabled community was treated back in the day. Once Geraldo had his video and people saw what was going on, the institutions were widely overpopulated and widely understaffed, so it wasn't a good combo, and it turned into a lot of unfair and horrible treatment. So there was a California law, the Lantern Act, which made disabled people have a Bill of Rights, basically. This right paired with a corresponding state obligation. It gave the disabled community sort of independence. The Lantern Act makes sure that the community is as independent as possible for what they are able to accomplish on their own, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
It started in the 1960s, again, when 13,000 people were warehoused in the institution. Governor Reagan signed it into law, and it was authored by Assemblyman Frank Ledgerin. The reason why he's the main person on the bill was a bunch of parents ambushed him in an elevator one day and they told him about everything that everything they wanted their children to achieve and what their children were going through at the time in the institutions. And this had a great effect on him. He became very passionate about the bill. And so it basically became his. And then let's talk about the 1985 Supreme Court decision. It was brought about because they were trying to, once the Letterman Act had become law, the state government was trying to sort of water it down a little bit. DDS, which is the governing body of the regional center, we'll get back to that in a little bit. But DDS was trying to put in rules into how you give disabled people their IPPs and what they can entail and what services the disabled community can have. So they were taken to court, and the Supreme Court in 1985 decided that the Lanterman Act was entitlement. It's the only entitlement for disabled people in the country. So basically, what that means is our rights are entitled to us. We are entitled to have the services we need. And sometimes that doesn't go quite as planned. And that doesn't mean I'm sure everybody who's listening to me now knows that we still have to fight for those rights that we want, but we
So
are
if
at. Go ahead.
in your challenges that we have these days, this is what this is what the legal system bases it on, right? Like, so if you were to hire a lawyer, they would go back to the Lanterman Act and say you're entitled to services, right?
Okay, sort of. So you would go to, so let's see.
This is the law that makes sure that you can get the services that you're entitled to.
Yes, through the
Okay,
regional center. So it's very important to understand that the Lanterman Act gave birth to the regional center.
I see. The regional center are the centers in California that
There's 21 of them.
hold, right? They're the ones you get the services from, right?
Right, right.
Got it.
And so, and we'll get to that in a slideshow a little later, but the regional centers are a nonprofit organization, so they're not technically a government institution.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But yeah, they're a nonprofit.
Great.
But they are overseen by DDS. You know, I'm sure it's in the slideshow later.
Yes. Go ahead. I'm sure you'll
Yeah,
get to it.
I'm really bad with
Let's get catch
yeah.
don't want to skip you up.
So anyway, but no, it's important to know that DDS controls regional center, and regional center makes sure you get your IPP, and your IPP tells you, and also IEP for younger children, sort of tells you, well, the IPPs make sure that you have what you need for the year, and those include services and resources and staffing, all types of things.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Sorry
Okay.
to derail you.
No, it's not really derailing. Okay, so no other state in the nation has made a similar promise. Like I said earlier, there's no other state that has an Entitlement Act.
Wow.
So, like I was saying, the 1985 decision made sure that the state cannot cut services to manage. They can't cut services from disabled people to manage the budget. There always has to be space in the budget for disabled services. However, that doesn't mean that we can get everything we need. The Lanterman Act isn't set in stone, so it can go away. Number one, sometimes things are taken away from the Lanterman Act, and sometimes things are added to the Lanterman Act, sort of like an ebb and flow of services. So that's what happens. You know, it's a government thing, and that's what happens in the government because people are always taking and putting back and taking and putting back. So,
But this says that they can't just cut services to manage the budgets. That's what you were saying. Yeah.
right, right. You can't like,
There
well,
has to
we
be,
have budget shortfall, so we're going to cut all services for from the regional center because we can't afford it this year. You're not allowed to do that.
got it.
So, but then when shortfalls do occur, the director must seek relief from the legislature, which is what it says right there. I was not reading, and you can get more funds, but what, like I was saying about the changing to the Lanterman Act, the government likes to take away. It doesn't like to, but it has the ability to take away from the Lanterman Act when deemed necessary, whether it's necessary or not. That's how government is, I guess. Again, I was talking about the IPP earlier, and anybody who's watching this video should know what the IPP is, and I have a video about the IPP in case you're interested, in case you don't know what it is. But the IPP is very important in the implementation of the Lanterman Act. It really helps implement the services that we need. It's
Right. So your IPP and your IEP for younger kids is what that paper is your legal right to services, right?
yes, yes. And like I said in the other videos, it's sort of like your IPP. It's your individual, unique plan. I was thinking about this earlier. If you have two people with CP and they're both the same age, they could have vastly different IPPs, even if they have the same, disability, if they're nearly exactly alike disability wise.
Got
nobody's
it.
really perfectly alike disability wise. With cerebral palsy, things can be very different. But let's just say, for argument's sake, they're as close as they can be. Their IPPs can be very, very different. And because people are unique.
Yeah.
So, what one person wants in one way, another person won't want. And usually the parents, especially with younger IPPs, well, IEPs, the parents will want different things for their children. And that's how it is.
Makes sense.
Okay, so again, we're talking here about DDS. The regional center is responsible for providing services to individuals and determining how those services are rendered. And DDS role limited to promoting cost effectiveness of regional center operations. It cannot control the manner in which they provide services. So, which means that DDS is okay, you need to give people IPPs, but DDS cannot tell them how to do their job.
Got it.
Again, I would say the biggest purpose of the Lanterman Act is independence. And there are some people who cannot live independently, and I acknowledge that, and that's fine. But for those people who can have any bit of independence at all, it's very important that we in the disabled community can get what we could possibly get.
Well, to get what you need, right? I mean, I think some of what you're saying would apply to like people in a group home. They're still living, even if they need more support than like you do at home, they're getting that individualized support because of this, correct?
Right. I mean, yeah, the still applies to people in group homes because there is still independence within group homes.
Right.
And one day I'm going to talk about there is actually a not I mean the Lanterman Act's technically the Bill of Rights for the disabled community in California, but I've seen an actual Bill of Rights and it's worth talking about. So when I can find out where that paper is or that file is, and then I can find it, it's really worth talking about. So we're gonna make a video of that one day.
Great.
It's a very interesting document, which I do not agree with, but we'll get to that.
All right.
It,
Another video,
yeah, I'm just
another
thinking. I'm
conversation.
thinking about it right now, and I had a fit when I read it, but
All right. Well, that's a later, and let's move
that's a
on with
story for
this one.
another time. Yeah, that's a story for another time. Okay, so one of the main groups that pushed the 1985 decision forward was the Association for Retarded Citizens, which is problematic in their naming, but now they're just called the ARC. They brought the case in 1985 to the Supreme Court, and they pushed for the rights. They've always been pushing for the rights of the disabled community since their founding in 1950. They didn't want their children to be institutionalized. They wanted their children to live out as best as they could. So they were the spark that lit the fire of the Landrum Act, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I love that it was founded by parents.
Yeah, yeah, and it's still going now. And it's still going pretty strong too. So now there are no institutions in my knowledge aren't any more institutions. Like Elise said a little while ago, there are group homes and there are daycare sort of day program services so that the disabled community can have a community because when you have day program you're part of a group and you don't feel so alone and disability can be very isolating, so group homes serve as a way of feeling togetherness with those that share the same issues that you have, which I think is very good for what it can provide.
Yeah, I think what I've always been impressed by is that you've been able to live independently for a little while, completely independently.
Yeah.
And now you are still living independently, but you get some help here and there during the day to help you with, just taking care of yourself, which I think is
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, you're lucky to be born now, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
50 years ago it would look very different. But that this it's very important, and I think it gives a lot of hope to parents who are worried that their children, won't have a meaningful, fulfilling life. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so that is something that I've always strived to be independent, and it's gotten a little bit more difficult in my older age. I
you're not
was much more independent as a younger man, but I'm still fairly independent. I'm still living on my own. I live with my son and my dogs. You can hear them in the background, sure.
That's
Um,
huge.
yeah,
And you're able to get out when you need to, which is important.
when yes, I'm able to get out when yes, I'm always out and about and doing things. Yeah, but no, there are a lot of people like me who can live on their own. I mean, I have a lot of help I have a lot of people who help me fulfill the needs that I need to meet to be independent. So it's not like independence doesn't mean I'm totally able to do everything on my own. I basically have an army of people who help me every day. People are coming and going in my house quite regularly. I'll have about three shift changes, and yeah, I have a lot of people in my house at a time. And you know what? It's part of being a community, and it's part of socialization, and that's just how disabled life is. We are independent with help.
Absolutely. And this Lanterman Act is part of what enables you to be able to fund that, which is very important.
Without the Lantern Act and without regional centers, I would probably have to foot the bill on my own, which would be nigh impossible. I was planning to move to Texas a little while ago when I was asking someone who worked in basically a similar area where they help the disabled. They said to me, you know what, if you're living in California right now, you might want to stay there because in Texas, you have to pay for everything on your own. And so I can't imagine like having to pay for all my supports with my
Yeah.
own cash. That would be,
Right. Then you end up in homes with maybe medical insurance paying if possible.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky to be in California and have this. It's really a shame that it doesn't exist in other states.
I'm sure something similar because I mean, I know I've heard of self-determination program
Right.
style. I mean, self-determination program as it is unique to California, but I've heard similar programs elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Other states do take care of their people,
Yeah, yeah,
but in different ways. So, all right. Should we move on?
yeah. Oh, this is important. There are 350,000 served in community-based settings today, so that's important to know. So basically, the disabled communities in California is 350,000 strong. So it's a lot of us.
Yep.
So in 1966, when the regional center was born, there were two pilot programs. One was in Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, which is down the street, and one was in Aid for Retarded Citizens. And they used that R word all the time back then. Just why not? So yeah. So yeah, there was two pilot programs, and now there's 21 regional centers in California.
Great.
The pilot programs were very successful, and they were able to help in a way that help was not available before then. And let's see.
This is a good one.
Yeah,
I think that it's important to note that difference that, it acknowledges both mental health and physical
yes, there are
mental
five.
disabilities, excuse me.
Yeah, there are five different criteria that meets regional center eligibility, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Ronald Reagan signed it into law in September. And yeah, again, Lanterman was the main Republican lawmaker, and Jesse Unruh was his second.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's an important thing to say that it's always been a bipartisan
Yes,
issue.
Unruh was a Democrat.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the progress of disability basically. So in 1969 it was only well, let's use intellectual disability because it's better anyway. It was only intellectual disability back then, and then it went to autism, and then 2 years before I was born, it was cerebral palsy was added, which is lucky for me, I guess. Epilepsy, and then it's so. We'll get to number five in a minute, but it needs to be talked about. And then, of course, in 2014, the R word was replaced by intellectual disability. And then there were two major amendments to the Lanterman Act. One was SB 1383, which let people be empowered, which means, I mean, independence and empowerment are hand in hand. So that's very important. And in 2003, this is very complicated because the way these three areas of major life activity sort of the criteria needs to be met are, so I have cerebral palsy. I am not, let's say the word is low functioning. I'm not a low functioning individual, which means that, but I do have some perceptual problems.
But you don't have intellectual impairment, is
I
that
don't
what
have
you're
intellectual impairments, but I do have perceptual problems. And I do have problems with how long it takes me to finish a task. And I have, I can't walk in case,
you live in your wheelchair.
yeah.
You got wheels.
Yeah, that might be an important thing, yeah. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I do have quite a few disabilities when you start going down the list, but
I think that substantial disability is important because I think from what I understand, it seems as if you have to meet a certain criteria in order to get support, and that support will look different depending on how substantial, in their words, the disability is.
right, right.
When I work in schools, that would determine whether you're in a more inclusive classroom with like a special ed teacher or whether you're in a more traditional classroom and maybe pulled out for supports, let's say, right?
Yeah.
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 And it's all
Okay.
the same funding source.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of disabilities that don't fall into the regional centers net, but for everything that does fall into the net, it's all the same resource.
Got it.
Again, this is the ARC versus DDS, which created the 1985.
The framework, really, right?
Yeah, yeah. In 1985, it became a whole different animal, and the entitlements and all that. See, the way the way the Supreme Court phrased it was that the entitlements were always there in the language, but the word entitlement wasn't used. But the Supreme Court said that they were always there. So the entitlements were there from the beginning. But since in 1985, they're like, these are entitlements and you are entitled for the services you need.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So, okay, so now let's talk about the five categories. So, like, this is very interesting. Intellectual disability is one, cerebral palsy on its own is another one. So, if you have cerebral palsy, you're automatically in the club. Epilepsy is one, autism is another, and the fifth category, which conditions similar to intellectual disability that require similar services. So that is such a wide open, like, what?
Well, I would imagine like Down syndrome falls in there
Yeah,
or
Down syndrome
any
does.
other like developmental learning disability. things like that.
Yeah, I mean, like it kind of yeah, it's wide open.
Yeah,
So
it's a lot of wiggle room. That's great.
yeah, it's great, but it's not really that great because it means that when left to interpretation, that's actually not always a benefit.
Yeah,
Because you can say no, 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 that doesn't fall into the criteria. When if it was, you know, translated a different way, it could be considered. That's what happens when people start.
could be too much wiggle room, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
there could be too much wiggle room, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, that makes sense. And it has to be diagnosed before they're 18.
Right, right. That's a very important distinction. You have to have your disability before you're 18, I think. It used to be before you were 8, but now
Oh,
it's
wow.
18. Okay. So I'm not going to read all these regional centers, but these are half the list. And then we have another half later. There's like 9 in Los Angeles alone. And I think there's like 6 in San Francisco. And then the rest are everywhere else. And this is the one that I made this one orange because this is my
Your
catchment.
region. Yeah, your region.
So if you are here in the North Los Angeles County Weasel Center, I can help you as an independent facilitator.
All right.
So let me know. These are all the other ones. Okay. And so there's not really much to say here, so we're gonna move on. So again, like the main goal of Lanterman Act is independent living, and independent living means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, which is part of what makes the regional center the regional center. It is based on the individual
I
needs,
love that.
not the collective needs.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So, and there is an appeal process if you don't feel that you were treated fairly or the decisions that were made. If you have an argument to get something that you were trying to get and they said no, there is an appeal process to get your denial reversed through a hearing. And there's a client's rights advocate also that when you're having trouble with a roadblock in the regional center, you can go to the client's rights advocate and they'll see whether your case is worthy or not.
That's great to have that.
Yeah. And I believe they can also help you outside of problems in the regional center, like if you're having problems elsewhere, but research that before you. I'm not 100%. I
Might
feel,
change a little depending on each regional center.
yeah, and I've been doing a lot of research in a lot of different places, so I might have seen that somewhere else. But
All right. What's next?
nothing.
Nothing. All right.
That's it.
That's it. That was a really good overview of the Lanterman Act. Thank you.
You are welcome. Absolutely. So I think we're done.
All right. Well, thanks for that.
You are welcome, and thank you for joining me again today.
Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Well, they can find me on Facebook at Rolling Through Consulting, or they can find me on the web at www.rollingthroughconsulting.com, or you can email me at rollingthroughconsulting@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram, or you can find me on YouTube at Rolling Through Consulting 77. I don't know why 77's there, but whatever. Rolling Through Consulting 77. I think that's all the ways you can get in touch with me.
All right.
I,
And Rollin is without a G, Rollin,
yes,
because
yes.
you're rolling, rolling, rolling.
I'm rolling all the time. Yes.
All right.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and leave a comment. And that's it. Have a great day, and I'll see you later.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.